Thank you. Good evening, I'm Candy Crowley. I want to turn the corner just a little bit, but not too hard. Tonight, I am pleased to announce in the DC area the launch of the David Lynch Foundation's Operation Warrior Wellness. This is a national outreach to teach transcendental meditation to 10,000 veterans who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. You heard from Dr. Rosenthal, the study results are in, they're impressive, better than just about anything they've tried, certainly far less expensive, reducing anxiety, reducing depression, hypervigilance, insomnia, substance abuse, violent behavior, and suicidal tendencies. The potential here is enormous. I would like to introduce you tonight to World War II hero and the co-founder of Operation Warrior Wellness, Jerry Yellen.
I am just one of 16 million people, Americans, who served in World War II. I was 17 on Pearl Harbor Day and 18 on February 15, 1942, when I enlisted in the Army Air Corps to become a fighter pilot to fight against my enemy, the Japanese. I graduated from flying school in August of 1943 with 10 hours in a P-40. I was shipped to Hawaii to join the 78th Fighter Squadron with 28 other pilots. They kept 5 of us in the squadron to learn to become fighter pilots. In December, Bill Sutherland was killed in a mid-air collision with Howard Edmondson. And then we transferred to P-47s, and Ed Green got into a flat spin and didn't get out, and he was gone. We then got P-51s, and one day at Bellows Field, a young Navy man tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I knew Bob Ferris. And I said, yes, he's the last man in a 16-man formation doing a loop. And as I spoke his name, his airplane exploded, and little pieces of aluminum came floating down. And a few months later, John Lindner pulled the wings off of his airplane, and he was gone. On March 7, 1945, we flew from Saipan to Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima, 650 miles from Tokyo, was invaded by the Marines on February 19th. There were 67,000 Marines fighting 23,000 Japanese on 8 square miles of land. And the sights and the sounds and the smells remain with me as I speak to you tonight. On April 7th, 16 of the top pilots in the 78th Fighter Squadron flew the first escort mission ever flown over Japan. I was on that mission, and I watched the bombers, the B-29s, drop their firebombs on square miles of Tokyo, and never once did it occur to me that there were human beings on the ground. They were Japanese, they were my enemy. The second mission on April 12th, coming back, Fred White bailed out. The chute never opened. We watched him fall into the sea. Then Wayland was killed, and Whiteman, and Reitman. Lee Barguer was strafing on Chichijima, and a bomb on the ground exploded underneath his airplane, and he was gone. And Dick Schroepel was following me on an 8-ship mission of strafing the runways and the aircraft on Chichijima, and they were shooting at me, and they hit him, and he bailed out, got into a lifeboat, got out to sea, and mortar fire killed him. On July 8th, my classmate, Al Sharon from Waterloo, Iowa, called in, I'm hit, and I can't see, and he was gone. And Pudgy Carr, my tent mate, didn't come back on that day. On August 13th, we were called to a mission, to a briefing. We were going to fly another mission. Atomic bomb had been dropped. Rumors were that the war was over. And we were briefing. Phil Schlomberg, 19 years old from Brooklyn, leaned over and he says, Captain, if I go, I'm not coming back. I couldn't get him a replacement. And on the 14th, when we took off, I told him, just stick close to my wing. The war will be over. They're going to broadcast the code word Ohio before we get to Japan, before we strafe the airfields. Nobody heard the code word. We went in, we strafed. Phil Schlomberg was on my wing. We needed 90 gallons of fuel to get back to Iwo Jima, 3.5 hours. When someone called in 90 gallons, we turned around and we headed back. We headed back and Phil was on my wing. I led the flight into some clouds, and when we came out of the clouds, Phil Schlomberg was gone. We landed on Iwo Jima. We found out that the war had been over for 3 hours. I was discharged in October, came back to New Jersey, discharged, had been a captain, squadron leader. I had no more buddies, no airplane to fly, no missions to fly. I was a lost soul. I lost my soul on Iwo Jima. In 1949, I went on a blind date, and I met my wife, Helene. Good Friday, 1949. We were married on October 22nd, 1949. Our first son was born on November 6, 1950, and our fourth son on August 16, 1960. We moved a lot. I took a lot of jobs. I was damaged goods. I loved my wife. She loved me. She still loves me, and I still love her. But I was damaged goods until she watched a TV program that had Maharishi Mahesh Yogi talking about transcendental meditation. She decided to learn, and I learned as well. I had a dramatic change in my attitude about life, my attitude about me, my attitude about her, my attitude about my family. My life became better. I became a better person, a really better person. Today, we have more than 500,000 young veterans and 10 or 12 or 15 people in their families suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. What they're getting as treatment isn't working. Antipsychotic and antidepressant drugs are very expensive, and they don't do the job. According to Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel laureate, and Linda Bilmes, a Harvard professor who wrote a book that was published in 2008 called The $3 Trillion War, we in America are going to have to spend $15 billion every year for the next 50 or 60 years taking care of the mental aspect, the mental disease called post-traumatic stress disorder for the veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. We have a better way of doing it. We have transcendental meditation. It helped me, it helped some of my friends, and it can help every single veteran who has ever been in combat, regardless of when or where it was. Operation Warrior Wellness started early last year when a young friend of mine from the Bosnia War committed suicide. And I knew what the David Lynch Foundation was doing, I knew what Bobby Roth was doing, and I called Bobby and I said, Bobby, do you think that the Lynch Foundation would open up their hearts and their minds and their money to produce so that we can teach TM to the veterans that are coming back? And he said yes. And so now we have Operation Warrior Wellness. America needs your help. The veterans and their families need your help. And Operation Warrior Wellness is well prepared to help. Thank you very much.
As a correspondent for CNN, I've traveled to a lot of bases. I've been in war zones. I've met a lot of military veterans like Jerry from World War II. Hearing his story, I can't help but think of there are those who suffer full-blown PTSD. So I've met totally dysfunctional veterans, but I've also met those who just have the residue of combat in their pores. And it is heartbreaking to talk to them because the details of their war experience they can't shake. I've talked to a World War II vet who still hates the sight of rice because the first person he killed had a box of rice in his backpack, and the veteran was starving and ate it, and he can't stand the sight of rice now. I met a Vietnam vet who at night hears the sound that bullets make when they go through the leaves in the jungle. I met a Korean vet who closes his eyes at night and sees the trucks coming this way piled high with dead bodies as he was walking that way as a new arrival in Korea headed for the front. So it is more than the totally dysfunctional PTSD vets. It is also so many of them who need to shake loose from their pores that residue that's holding them back from being what they can be. This is a crisis. Individually, it's a crisis by the numbers. 18 veterans commit suicide every day, according to the VA. In fact, in the past 2 years, more soldiers and veterans have killed themselves than have been killed in combat. Think about that for a second. About 13% of homeless men are veterans, and nearly 50% of veterans with PTSD haven't received any help for it, and those who have, the help has been inadequate. Sometimes they don't return. So there is a lot here that obviously those of us who practice transcendental meditation think can come to play for the help for those who went off to war, regardless of what time they went off to war. Dan Burks was just 19 years old when he enlisted to fight in Vietnam.
December 18th, 1967, Newsweek. Yeah, 5 days after my birthday. This is a story called The Day's Work. And this is my unit. We went out and got ambushed. And this is me. Yeah, doing my job. We were attacked at this place called Buda. That fight went on for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The first night, I killed 14 people. There were 2,500 of them and 250 of us. The next morning, in front of my fighting position, 18 of our men did. So this is very, very, very distressing. And it creates huge amounts of distress in your system, And then later in the magazine, coincidentally, is this. This is an article about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and a couple of guys in my platoon. One of them got the magazine, and he came running over. He said, "Burks, you got to read this." So I did, and I said, "I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that," because it talks about stress release, about becoming a whole person. So then the next part of the story is getting home, and that's a whole big deal because things changed. Things changed. All of a sudden, you're in a different culture. All these people don't understand you. They have no idea. They don't realize that you're always still in the rubber plantation of the jungle. You're always on an adrenaline high. You're looking to protect your buddies. You're looking to protect yourself. You're looking to kill the enemy. I stopped talking to my parents. I had really bad relationships with other people. I did not feel happiness. I did not feel sorrow. I did not feel surprise. My feelings were gone. So one day, my wife comes home, says, "Hey, I saw a poster about transcendental meditation." And I remembered that article in that magazine about Maharishi, and that I said I was going to do this. And so I go in, and he says, "Okay, sit down, do this." And I could not believe what happened. It was the difference between heaven and hell. It was absolutely transformational. All that feeling of stress and all that feeling of heaviness, I could feel it melt away from my head to my feet. And from that moment on, things changed. Things changed. No more drugs, no more alcohol. Life changed. My emotions came back. My life came back. Thank you. This is my family, my wife Cindy, our son Salim. I'm here to tell you PTSD hurts. I was wounded by shrapnel. That wound totally shrinks to insignificance compared to the wound of PTSD. But we're also here to tell you, myself and my family were PTSD survivors. And we didn't just survive, we've thrived. And it's directly the result of learning transcendental meditation. And I'm really here to thank the David Lynch Foundation for what they're doing for this cause. The David Lynch Foundation is providing an opportunity with the cutting-edge technology of transcendental meditation to stop the suffering of our warriors and their families. And TM needs to be added to the treatment that is already going on. Now, not later. We need to stop the festering of the wound of TM. Now, not later. And with your help, we can do this today, not later. And we can start today. Thank you very much for coming.
So Dan reminds us that for every veteran in trouble, there's a family also in trouble. Mothers every day in the United States watch their children go off to war, and often when they return home, these sons and daughters are different. They are distant, or they are lost, or they are angry, some of them suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. This is exactly what Julia George faced when her son David came home from Iraq.
My name is Julia Elena George. I am the mother of David Maurice George. When he finished high school, he decided to go to the Army for one major reason. I will never forget that. He was very, very upset and heartbroken when the Twin Towers collapsed. He says, I'm going to go.
The war started while I was in basic, so when I got out of basic, they gave us this speech that, you know, you kind of hear in the movies where it's like, look to your left, look to your right. These guys are not going to be alive.
We spoke many times over the phone while he was in Iraq, and he was telling me what he was going through.
The big thing for me was a car bomb had hit our compound and gotten through the gate, and luckily one of the guys shot the car till they detonated, till the people inside detonated. There were two enemy combatants, I would say. Hit the trigger right, I guess, as they were dying, and blew the car up, and subsequently like 50 people were injured in the attack.
It's so horrible, these explosions and killing, and seeing his friends, arms here, heads there, right in front of you, your good friends. Oh, when he come back. That's the part that sometimes I don't like to talk, because it's so painful. He was out of his mind for the effects of the war. He was disrespectful, he was cursing me.
I just gravitated towards alcohol. I bought whiskey, I bought Jack Daniels. And that's how that started, because as soon as I had a couple swigs, I was like, all right, well, that takes care of that. And so every time afterwards, when it would creep up, you go drink.
And not obeying the law, not obeying nothing, absolutely nothing. He had many car accidents because he was drinking. He said, I don't care, Mom, I don't care. If I die tomorrow and I crash a car. And he told me, one of my friends just died. Don't you understand? I am supposed to be there. If I would be there, he will not be dead. And I'm here. What can I do? Tell me, what can I do being here? So I was afraid many times he will kill himself. Many. That one day when I come from work, or when I go downstairs, when I wake up in the morning, he will be dead. I lived like that for so many years. When he found the DM, he changed his way of thinking. He started appreciating his life. And he's another person. He's normal. He's thinking about the future, thinking about respecting, more than anything, respecting himself, loving himself. The first class that he went to, he says, every day, every time that I meditate is better, and I feel better and better and better. Thanks to the TM meditation. He's not drinking, he is happy. It's beautiful, it's incredible.
The first time I meditated, I experienced this relief from the constant anxiety attack my life had become. I didn't even realize I was that stressed out, but after my first 20 minutes, when I came out of it, I realized, I was like, that was a break. Now, being someone who's meditated for a year and 2 months, I'm so happy. I'll never stop. You know, it has this compounding effect of just getting better and better, and this great feeling lasts longer and longer the more I meditate. You know, why stop?
That is the boy that I raised. TM saved his life.
This is my mom, Julia George. All right.
Thank you very much for coming and supporting this wonderful, wonderful organization. If you know, or if you know somebody who is suffering, like my son and I suffered, please contact or tell your friends to contact to this wonderful organization. Thank you.
PTSD, you've heard 1,000 times. What does it mean? It's a bad day. Everyone's had it. You know, that's the only way I can explain it. There's nothing but saying that it's a bad day that doesn't go away. You wake up with it, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. And I end up treating the ones I love like my mom. I only saw that portion of her video for the first time yesterday because I didn't want to relive how I treated her and how I made her feel. It was something I didn't want to go through again. I knew it was bad for me, and I knew I made it bad for her. But I couldn't take care of myself. Everything was going down the drain, dropping out of college. But when I started meditating, was it a year and 2 months I said there? And I remember that, and I thought I was like smiling. I thought I was like, yeah, a year and 2 months, but I see it, and I wasn't that happy. But now I've been meditating for 2 years, 2 months, like 3 weeks and two days, I think. So, yeah. So, and right, I'm smiling, I think. It's good, it's good. And I'm gonna keep doing it because of Transcendental Meditation, you know, I went back I'm in a real university now. I'm finishing my bachelor's in a year. I love my mom. We're getting along great. The family's awesome. And I'm here to really speak and spread the news that this is changing people's lives for the better, and everybody should get a part of it. So thank you for supporting this. Thanks for coming tonight.
Hypervigilance, insomnia, substance abuse, violent behavior, and suicidal tendencies. The potential here is enormous. I would like to introduce you tonight to World War II hero and the co-founder of Operation Warrior Wellness, Jerry Yellen.
I am just one of 16 million people, Americans, who served in World War II. I was 17 on Pearl Harbor Day and 18 on February 15, 1942, when I enlisted in the Army Air Corps to become 23,000 Japanese on 8 square miles of land. And the sights and the sounds and the smells remain with me as I speak to you tonight. On April 7th, 16 of the top pilots in the 78th Fighter Squadron flew the first escort mission ever flown over Japan. I was on that mission, and I watched the bombers, the B-29s, drop their firebombs on square miles of Tokyo, and never once did it occur to me that there were human beings on the ground. They were Japanese, they were my enemy. The second mission on April 12th, coming back, Fred White bailed out. His chute never opened. We watched him.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Candy Crowley. I want to turn the corner just a little bit, but not too hard. Tonight, I am pleased to announce in the DC area the launch of the David Lynch Foundation's Operation Warrior Wellness. This is a national outreach to teach transcendental meditation to 10,000 veterans who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. You heard from Dr. Rosenthal, the study results are in, they're impressive, better than just about anything they've tried, certainly far less expensive, reducing anxiety, reducing depression.
Young Navy man tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I knew Bob Ferris. And I said, yes, he's the last man in a 16-man formation doing a loop. And as I spoke his name, his airplane exploded, and little pieces of aluminum came floating down. And a few months later, John Lindner pulled the wings off of his airplane, and he was gone. On March 7th, 1945, we flew from Saipan to Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima is 650 miles from Tokyo, was invaded by the Marines on February 19th. There were 67,000 Marines fighting 20 fighter pilot to fight against my enemy, the Japanese. I graduated from flying school in August of 1943 with 10 hours in a P-40. I was shipped to Hawaii to join the 78th Fighter Squadron with 28 other pilots. They kept 5 of us in the squadron to learn to become fighter pilots. In December, Bill Sutherland was killed in a mid-air collision with Howard Edmondson. And then we transferred to P-47s, and Ed Green got into a flat spin and didn't get out, and he was gone. We then got P-51s, and one day at Bellows Field, a young